Hello, my name is Ilyeh and I am with Angela to briefly talk about topics of lived experiences, safe spaces, and community. So, first, the reason I wanted to talk about these topics was because I think without a solid understanding of the history that makes up the context of the country that we're living in, it is impossible to truly comprehend the current issues in race and diversity. The things I'm about to say are things that you should all know already. I'm not giving you any new historical information, but perhaps you've never put this information into the context of how it impacts us today, particularly people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. So it's no secret in your history lessons that Britain was a huge empire that colonized almost a quarter of the world's population in its peak. So actually in a YouGov poll conducted in January 2016, and then again it was done in 2018, 43% of participants regarded empire as a good thing, and 49% thought that former British colonies are now better off for having been part of the empire. Disturbingly, a third of participants also wished that Britain still had an empire. This mentality is probably natural when you're not the person suffering the effects of the empire now, and we're also provided a false education about the realities of empire, which often is a narrative that sings the benefits of empire for Britain while ignoring its devastating impact on the peoples whose lands were taken, cultures transformed, and pre-existing economic and political structures just completely destroyed. Similar to this, the current crisis in the Middle East is a direct result of European countries and governments drawing boundaries on a map as a result of the First World War. So this is all things that have come from empire leading on to First World War, Second World War, and a lot of countries are suffering the impact of this. You know, perpetual war in these countries results in displacement of communities who are forced to migrate to countries like the UK in hope of safety and a better life. Unfortunately, this is often not what they're met with. Anyway, why is any of this important as a speech and language therapist? The demographic of the people who are walking into our clinics and therapy rooms are increasingly those who have had to navigate all the trauma, societal barriers, and identity issues that are direct consequences of everything that I've just mentioned. Colonial systems and racist policies, they're all ingrained into every aspect of our society, including healthcare. So we are not exempt from this in the healthcare system. And the long-lasting impact that all of this has on our communities is a very fractured sense of self within the system, feeling like you're not worthy of the treatment, or that you don't know what treatment is available to you. A lot of people from Black and ethnic minority communities have unequal access to services due to linguistic or financial barriers. And overall, the support is a lot less. And on top of this, there's an emerging diaspora. So that's like first, second generation young people who are all navigating multiple identities, which sometimes are conflicting. So who they are in their family life, their culture and their upbringing, and also having been born here from parents who have not been born here, and being British, what does that mean to them? And all of these really conflicting emotions and identity that we go through as migrant young people. And of course, every family is different. They've all gone through very different things and have very different realities from a variety of experiences. But the backdrop of this historical context in this country is prevalent now and forms many of our collective lived experiences, and many of our patients' lived experiences too. Having an awareness at some level of the fact of all of these factors at play is vital in providing truly impactful patient-centered care. So now we wanted to talk about safe spaces. So both Angela and I have spent the last year almost creating platforms and spaces for Black and ethnic minority speech and language therapists. And Angela is going to talk a little bit about that experience setting up SLTs of colour.
SLTs of Colour was set up to raise the profile of speech and language therapy as a profession, but also to highlight the many SLTs of colour that exist. I've heard a lot over the last 9 months that by us talking about race, we're only highlighting the divide, creating a divide, highlighting it, and creating something that's not there. But actually, the divide's always been there. Families, diverse families, are always talking about race. We've always experienced race, overt and covert racist acts, and we're not talking about race to alienate people. We are talking and now sharing the experiences that we have gone through, that we're going through. Just because you don't know about it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Talking to many of the platform followers have been really helpful. It's good to know that you're not the only person who's going through this. It's also good to know that when you experience something, somebody else has experienced that too. One of the things we hear a lot from the platform followers and some of the students as well is that they weren't aware of their own ethnicity until they started their first day on the course. They feel othered and hyper aware of their race. They're hyper aware of the differences between them and their white peers. And these differences have been brought to their attention in a negative way by lecturers or during placement. Placement's already an environment where you're being judged, so being hyper aware of your race just adds extra pressure. Being a person of colour is positive. We bring so much more to the table, apart from bilingualism. All Black and minority ethnic people walk this fine line between your family culture and the culture of being brought up in Britain. We bring those benefits and awareness to our dealings with our patients, our clients. We appreciate that the research wasn't normed on families that look like us, on children that look like us always, and therefore we know to ask those pertinent questions. And our advice is always targeted a little bit more to those diverse families. For instance, we will ask, what does play look like in your family? Or we will say, what does a typical meal look like, if we're looking to give some advice on eating and drinking. The platform is woe is me, it's really terrible type of thing. We don't believe our white colleagues are aware of what life is like as a person of colour. The platform seeks to share those experiences and also to celebrate the very many SLTs that are out there. I spoke to a student a couple of weeks ago, and she had said that she hadn't seen an East Asian therapist ever until she looked at the platform and saw two. You cannot be what you don't see. We truly appreciate our white allies who have contacted us and the efforts that they've made to diversify their practice. We exist to amplify the voices of many other platforms out there that are talking about this. We don't know everything. We want to bring attention to speech and language therapy as a career. We want to attract more and more students of colour so that the profession looks like the diverse community that it represents. And I say to you students of colour, you may feel out of place because no one else in the room looks like you, but you do own your space and it's the right space for you to be.
Thank you so much, Angela. And I just want to echo everything you said. Myself and the girls on the SLT time team as well have been through a really interesting few months and really have learned so much and networked with so many amazing people and amazing platforms. And again, watch this space for everything that is to come and all the new projects that we have under our sleeves. So definitely. We wanted to end on community. So what can we as a community of speech and language therapists do to better our practice and actively strive towards being an anti-racist profession? So we spoke a bit about what we as a community of Black and ethnic minorities therapists have done, so creating safe spaces and platforms. But I think that we all have a collective job within the anti-racism movement as well, so including our white colleagues. And I think for me, there are 4 major actions that we can take as a profession to sort of go towards becoming an anti-racist profession. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was acknowledge. So acknowledging and becoming more aware of your privilege and how that has impacted your views and your experiences, and just sort of identifying your positionality within the world, and how your lens, what your lens is. So just having that basic sort of self-reflection and identification within yourself, and also how your bias was formed, because not all biases are negative. We've all got different views and opinions, but how yours is formed and how that impacts your interactions with others, particularly those patients that walk in through your door from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, and perhaps acknowledging any microaggressive behavior that you may do unconsciously, or just identifying it when you see it around you and being able to pick up on that within yourself. And also acknowledging what you do and don't know at this current time. So that goes for everybody, even myself and people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. There is a lot that we know from lived experience, but there is a lot that we don't as well. So we're all going through this process of acknowledging what that is, identifying the gaps, and then going through a process of filling that in through educating, which is my next big action, is educate. So, consider all of this CPD. If you're watching this video, it's probably a good start. If you've signed up for the anti-racism event, that's another great step. If you've watched our podcast, and if you've gone on the SLTs of Color Instagram, that's another great step. So, using these opportunities of things that have been created recently to further educate yourself on the movement, on the situation as it currently stands, having discussions with people, listening to people's lived experiences. There's an abundance of reading and online resources available right now. So it's kind of not an excuse to not have that research and not have that information available. And asking questions when you're unsure and nobody's expecting. It's complex for us as well, who's going through it. But asking questions when you're unsure and seeking the right advice, and making sure that you're really listening to others. I also speak about community outreach often on Twitter and on SLT Time, but I really think that community outreach is vital, because I think it's impossible to assume that you can help people when you don't understand anything about them, or you don't know anything about their culture or their lifestyle. So for me, getting to know the demographic of the area that you live in, the community that you live in, the patients that are walking through your door, getting to know them as a community, and the society around you, wherever it is that you're based and that you're working. And then I think another big action would be reflecting. So I sort of mentioned that as briefly before, but reflect on your practice, on the frameworks and the assessments that you use, and even the intervention programs, reflecting on everything and not just taking everything for face value, and not just thinking that this applies one shoe fits all, because most of our assessments, if not 98% of our assessments and interventions, are not standardized for people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. So just being aware of that. I'm not saying no one's saying don't use them, but adapting them, being dynamic, and seeking advice wherever you can, wherever possible, on how to make that really effective, and identifying what is actually necessary for that family. Reflecting on your settings, the settings that you work on, the structures, the management, and the environment that your practice is done in, what is missing and what is currently in place, and what gaps are there in your service and how can that be filled. Angela mentioned about resources and about supporting students on placement, and all of these things are things that you need to reflect on in your wider service development. And then lastly, I would say that the next biggest action that we can take as speech and language therapists is networking. And I think actively making connections that will broaden your perspectives is so important. So like I said, we've all got our own lens that we view the world, and you can't view the world from another person's lens, but you can hear about it and you can try to understand it and educate yourself on how another person views the world and what lens they're looking at, which will then inform your practice greatly. Networking through social media, so SLTs of Colour, SLT Time, hashtag Listen In. All of these platforms have been created, like we've mentioned, and I think supporting them and engaging these projects is so important, because a lot of hard work is going behind the scenes. And I think that particularly as most of those platforms were created by people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, this is an emotionally draining tasks that we've all embarked on, and it's draining for us, and it's it's a work of passion, but it's still something that is difficult for us. So supporting those projects and promoting everything, getting involved with our discussions on social media and learning from everything that we're putting out there is so vital for our community. Again, just networking and having discussions with the patients and families that walk in through your door, just your general rapport building that you would do, but really take the time to get to know their cultural context and the history and the background that they're coming from, and allowing that to influence your input, and allowing that to help you shape your relationship with them so that they are able to trust you as a healthcare professional, because like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of factors that we are coming into these rooms with, and they need to be accounted for any intervention or practice to be impactful long term. So yeah, that was a really brief summary of sort of lived experiences, the creation of safe spaces within those, as a result of those lived experiences, and now sort of our community as a speech and language therapy profession. Thank you so much for listening, and like I said, we really hope that everybody continues engaging with all of the various platforms that have been created by Black and ethnic minority speech and language therapists over the last few months. Learning and supporting us and engaging with us is so important and so vital. And also by watching this video, I assume that you're going to be involved in the Royal College Anti-Racism event in May. So that would be amazing as well. And that we all collectively together as a community strive towards becoming an anti-racist profession. Thank you.